स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्. So the topic before us is some of the fundamental principles of Advaita philosophy, Advaita tradition. Now, the word Advaita itself means non-dual. The fundamental thesis of Advaita philosophy is that the absolute reality is one, without a second. Advaita approaches reality from 4 different angles. First, the reality itself, and then its opposites. So, in the technical language of Vedanta tradition, it is called Paramarthika Satta, Vyavaharika Satta, and Pradibhasika Satta. These are 3 levels of reality in Advaita Vedanta. And what is absolutely unreal is called Asat, the absolute unreality. So there is an interesting, very famous statement that has been repeated for centuries in Advaita tradition: Brahma Satyam Jagad Mithya, Jivo Brahmaiva Na Aparaha. Brahman is the only reality. This world is only a relative, a phenomenal reality, in the sense it is non-absolute. Not unreal, but not absolute. And Pradibhasika Satta, the conceptual ideas that we have in our mind about different things, they are not totally unreal because they do have a basis, but not in the context where the statement is made. I shall try to make this clear. In course of time, this becomes clear. Now, what does Advaita means by making this statement? That Brahman is the only absolute reality. If we put A and R in capital, it says Brahman is the only absolute reality. And what do we mean by absolute? And what do we mean by absolute reality? The absolute reality is something that remains the same, unchanging, in the past, present, and future. In other words, it exists beyond time, beyond space, beyond causation. And again, this absolute reality is experienced without any change in all the 3 states of awareness. Our 3 states of awareness are the waking state, the dream state, and the dreamless or deep sleep state. We know very well that we don't see this world as it is. In dream, we see it differently. In waking state, we see the world, we experience the world using our mind and our senses of perception in waking state. And we interact with the world using all these. We use our mind, our senses of perception and senses of action. Mana, Jnanendriyani and Karmendriyani. All these are used in interacting with the world in waking state. So we see the world, different worldly objects, the sea, the mountain, the skies, human beings, the animal world, all we see using our mind and our sense of sight. And we interact with this. We live in this phenomenal world. We work in the phenomenal world, empirical world, using our mind, our senses of perception, eyes, ears, etc., and also our senses of action. We walk, we do work with our hands. So the senses of action are involved, and we need mind, and also we need eyes, different senses of perception. That's how we see things in the phenomenal world. In dream, we see, we experience, we interact with the world, but our eyes are closed, still we see. Our ears are not working, our external ears, but still we hear things in dream. So we go through all these experiences in dream, but only at the internal level. So it is called sukshma or subtle, not gross, as in waking state. At a subtle level, at the mental world, we experience things in dreams. In deep sleep, we don't see anything, we don't experience anything, but when we wake up, when we come out of the deep sleep, we feel a great sense of relaxation and restfulness, which shows that we have undergone that blissful restfulness in deep sleep. Now, these are three states. In all these three states, there is one consciousness that is always present. In waking state, in dream, and also in deep sleep, because in deep sleep also that consciousness was present. Only the mind was not functioning, because the consciousness that is present in waking state was present in deep sleep. That's why when we come into waking state, we are able to recollect the blissful experience we have undergone in deep sleep. Now, Brahman, the absolute reality, is ever present in all the three states. So it is not affected by the changes in the three states. It's called avasthatraya abadhita. So there are certain criteria to decide the absolute reality in Vedanta. Very often we have a lot of misunderstandings about this. When we say that Brahman is only reality, we understand it as a concept, because there is a witness, there is an experiencer, a subject, a perceiver, a seer in waking, in dream, and also deep sleep states. We understand it very well. But then why do we say the world is mithya? So that should be understood very clearly. The purpose of this lecture is partly to clear some of the common misunderstandings about Advaita Vedanta. The common misunderstanding in Advaita Vedanta is that when we declare that the world is mithya, we understand wrongly that we mean to say that the world is unreal. That's not what Vedanta says. In fact, surprisingly, there is an unknown mystery about this concept. Shankaracharya writes long paragraphs in Brahma Sutra to establish the fact that this world that we experience is not absolutely unreal. The idea that this world, phenomenal world, the empirical world is unreal was partly due to the mixing up of Vijnanavada and Advaita Vedanta. When Shankaracharya was born, the Buddhist philosophical tradition has been divided into four major groups. The Sautrantika and Vaibhashika schools, the schools of realism, which argue the phenomenal world is real, which believed the reality of objective world, and the Shunyavada and Vijnanavada, the two schools of idealism, which argued that the phenomenal world is an illusion, it is unreal. And Shankaracharya writes long paragraph saying that this phenomenal world, the empirical world in which we are living, is not absolutely unreal. So he said, Na bhava upalabdhehe, this is Brahma Sutra. It has no, the phenomenal world is not absent, it is not unreal, it is not non-existent. Because we experience it. So, I don't want to quote those verses. It says, suppose we eat food. Can we say that we did not eat food? There was no food, there was no eating. We can't say that. So the empirical world, the phenomenal world is real, but only in a relative sense. It is not absolutely real, because to qualify for the status of absolute reality, it should exist without any change. It should be the same in the past, present and future. It should be the same in waking state, in dream state and deep sleep state, which, as everyone knows, is obviously not true about the external world in which we are living, because this world has been changing, the entire cosmos has been changing. The world in which we are living was different maybe hundreds of thousands of years ago. It'd be different from what it is now, hundreds of thousands of years later. So changes are a part of the world in which we are living. And whatever changes in time or in the states of awareness cannot be real in the absolute sense, but is real in the relative sense. So that's the meaning of mithya, means something that is relatively real, but not absolutely real. So one common misunderstanding that we have got today, and it has been true in India for the last several hundreds of years, when non-Advaitic philosophers tried to attack Advaita, saying that Advaita is Mayavada or Mithyavada. No, Advaita is Brahmavada. Advaita's main thesis is that Brahman is the only reality. Its main argument is not that the world is Mithya. And not only that, the opponents of Advaita, even today, they wrongly argue, without any access to the original works of Shankaracharya, that Advaita tells us that this world is absolutely unreal, which will make Advaita a very ridiculous concept. If you tell somebody that you are not standing there, if you tell somebody that the San Francisco Bridge is not there, if you tell somebody the bay is not there, if you tell somebody that these chairs are not in front of us, it will be absolutely ridiculous. So, we should remember that is not the view of Advaita. Rather, in Shankaracharya's works, he makes strong arguments against the view of Vijnanavadins, a school of subjective idealists, who argued that the phenomenal world is unreal. He said, no, you are wrong. The external world is not unreal in the absolute sense. It is real, but it is not absolutely real. So that is an important point to remember. In fact, this concept is very close to the real original Shunyavada of Nagarjuna. But again, Nagarjuna's system of Shunyavada was wrongly interpreted to mean that Shunyada means absolute nothingness. That was not the true implication of the word Shunya in Madhyamika Karika or Chandrakirti's commentary on Madhyamika Karika. That's a different subject. So we should remember that to understand the true meaning of the ideal, the teaching that Brahman is the only reality, we should know the true meaning of the statement, the next statement, that Jagat Mithya. Jagat Mithya means this world, this phenomenal world that we see in front of us, that we live in, that we are part of, is not at all unreal in the absolute sense. It is unreal only in the sense that it undergoes change, it undergoes modification. So that's an important point to remember. So first important principle of Advaita Vedanta is Brahman is the only absolute reality. Now this again is not just a concept. It is not an idea. It is not a doctrine. It is a kind of intuitive experience that we realize, that we experience as part of our spiritual evolution. It is something that we experience. It is not a doctrine that we believe in, that we conceptualize. So Shankaracharya himself makes this very clear. If a person believes at the beginning of his spiritual journey that this world is real, that God has a specific form, that God has got certain qualities, certain characteristics, just like human beings, that is just the embodiment of all good qualities that we can imagine, we can think of, excluding all evil that we can think of, that God is nothing but a sum total of all that is positive. It is perfectly okay. It is perfectly all right. Shankaracharya says, you are perfectly okay. But as you evolve in your spiritual life, your idea of God, your idea of the absolute reality also will evolve. You can very easily understand this. A physicist, when he first went to kindergarten and started reading or listening to some lessons on physics, he may have had some understanding of physics. When he went to primary school, he may have a different understanding, an improvement of what he had learned in kindergarten. And even when he goes to college, then he will have a much better understanding of physics. And when he becomes a well-established Nobel laureate, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, then his idea of physics will be totally different from what idea he had when he first went to the kindergarten next to his home. He must have been taken by his parents, his mother, to the kindergarten nearby, or primary school, where he first learned some lessons on physics. So his understanding of what he's learning evolves as he grows from a primary student to a physicist. Like that, in our own spiritual life, as we grow, as we evolve, as we progress, what happens is we get a better and more comprehensive understanding of what the reality is. We don't tell the primary student that he is wrong, because he is right at his level. He himself will realize that his understanding is not complete when he goes to college or later when he goes to university. Like that, we evolve, we grow, we progress, beginning our spiritual journey with Advaita, with dualism. And then we evolve, reach the next stage, is qualified non-dualism, is called Visishtadvaita of Ramanuja. And then when we reach the highest spiritual evolution in our life, then the truth of Advaita, non-duality, becomes a matter of experience, not a matter of doctrine or concept. One major misunderstanding that we have got today is we reduce Advaita, we bring it down to the level of a concept, an idea or a doctrine, something to believe in, something to talk about. Talking about is good, because talking about, thinking about will certainly equip our mind with the necessary qualifications to understand it better. That's why Shankaracharya insisted, it is not a doctrine, it is not a concept. Not only that, he goes to the extent of saying, Prag Brahma Vijnana Sarva Loka Vyavaharanam Satyittu Vabuttihi Yada Swapnandrushta Seva Prag Prabodhat. You find the statement in the Brahma Sutra Bhashya and elsewhere with different wordings. What Shankara says is, just the dream world or the dream experiences are real for a person who is dreaming. Similarly, this world is real when we have not reached, when we have not attained the Advaitic experience. Until we reach this Advaitic experience, we must act and live as if this world is real and make use of this world, do spiritual disciplines, undergo spiritual practices, and then slowly evolve and make our mind ready, prepare our mind for experiencing the truth of non-dualism, Advaita. So, in other words, Advaita is an all-accommodating, all-accepting, all-inclusive system of philosophy. When we talk about philosophy, again, you should remember, Shankaracharya himself said, Sutya, Yuktya, Swanubhutya. One should listen to the scriptures. That is good, that's fine. We should read books. And then we should use our intelligence, our reasoning power. And then we should experience it in our life. So how do we experience this? As I mentioned, by making our mind ready. Just as a student goes through these different stages like kindergarten, primary school, college, university and so on before he becomes a well-established physicist. Like that, we should also undergo certain efforts, certain disciplines. And he has enumerated 7 important disciplines. The first 4 disciplines are called sadhana chatushtaya sampatti. The 5th, 6th and 7th are called sravana, manana, nididhyasana. So Brahma Satyam, Brahman is the only absolute reality, is something that we have to experience in our life. And that experience comes when we start a spiritual journey in the world of our own spiritual experiences. So the first discipline according to him is, in the Sanskrit language called Adu Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka, means, in simple English, it means a proper understanding, a proper recognition of what really matters and what really doesn't matter, in plain English. In other words, what is Nitya, what is Anitya, what is eternal, what is immortal, what is everlasting, what is unchanging, and what is otherwise, what is changing, what is not eternal, what is momentary is anitya, what is eternal, what is unchanging is nitya. So a proper understanding, a proper comprehension of what is real and what is unreal. In fact, what is real and what is unreal could be different for various persons according to their own spiritual, cultural, intellectual fitness. What we normally consider to be the most significant thing in our life depends upon our own culture, our own spiritual evolution. A child may consider a chocolate or a toy as the most wonderful thing in this world. He may fight for it with his brother or sister when he is a small little child, because a chocolate is the most important thing or a toy is the most important thing. When a child grows, becomes a boy, he may go for something better, something more everlasting. When he becomes a young man or a young woman, they will go for more, everlasting things which last longer. And when the person becomes old, then also the preferences, the choices, what we go after, what we idealize will be different, will change. Similarly, in our own spiritual life, what we consider to be the vital thing to care for, to worry about, depends upon our own cultural, spiritual evolution. For spiritual life, we should remember what is really worthwhile in this world. Money, status, job, all these things are important, necessary, unavoidable. But it's an everyday experience for everyone that they do not bring lasting contentment. For some time, people become happy when they get these things, but again the mind goes back to different state. Again we will be looking for more and more of those things, which means all worldly enjoyments, all worldly comforts are in fact non-eternal categories, not absolutely real. then what is the absolute reality? Something that gives you a state of real contentment and joy and happiness and satisfaction. We remains there all the time, which is permanent. And that doesn't happen when you get external things in the empirical world. So that is the beginning of a person's spiritual journey. The realization that there is something higher than all that I'm getting here in this world that I should look for. And that's the only thing which is going to give me contentment, real joy. All other forms of contentment and satisfaction that we get by acquiring worldly things can only give us a temporary suspension of painful experiences. But those things will change again. The sorrows, the dissatisfaction, discontentment will come back again. So there is something transcendental, something that doesn't belong to this world, which alone can give me eternal contentment or satisfaction or joy. This is the beginning of spiritual journey. It is a kindergarten of spiritual evolution. It is a first step. And when we get this, then there is a natural and inevitable stage which comes next. In Sanskrit is called Ihamutra Phalabhoga Viraga. So when we get this full understanding and conviction that all worldly things are inadequate, they are unreal in the sense that they cannot give us real or eternal permanent joy and contentment, then what happens is we will have a feeling of renunciation. Well, I don't want that. I don't want something that can only give me a postponement of problems, a temporary suspension of problems. I don't want that. I want something that gives me a permanent suspension of problems. That is the real contentment. So you feel a kind of natural aversion, not hatred, but you don't consider those things as worth looking for. And that is the next stage of spiritual evolution. A sense of renunciation for worldly things. It doesn't mean that you go to forest. You may be working in an office. You may be a busy man in this world, but still you will be able to know that all these things that you are working for, well, they are needed so long as you have to live in this world, but the real purpose of human life is something higher and superior. So you feel a natural sense of renunciation, means you consider all these, you relegate all these to a secondary category. When this happens, naturally mind gets slowly restrained. Our senses, our mind, our ideas will not go for worldly objects. This is a natural sense of mental restraint, a sense of withdrawal from external things, and a sense of concentration of higher values, and a sense of sanctity and sacredness for spiritual values, samadhi, sharka sampatti. So all these come as shama, dhamma, uparadi, tidiksha, shraddha, samadhanam, that Shankaracharya says. This titiksha is something that becomes natural and necessary. Tidiksha is the ability to withstand and hold on to your ideal, even when you face setbacks and difficulties in life. That's because you are able to restrain your mind, you are able to exercise self-control, you are able to exercise restraint of the senses. And when you get these three qualifications, that is, a sense of real and unreal, and a sense of renunciation of the unreal, and then all these other qualities like self-restraint, self-control, forbearance, concentration, sense of sanctity, and so on, then what happens? You will have a strong desire to realize this higher value. Again, I should repeat, this is not a concept. It is a road that we have to walk in our spiritual life. If you want to travel by walking, writing a long book on travel, or talking to somebody who has traveled is not enough. You have to start walking. Then only you will reach your destination. So that's why we have to insist again and again. These are spiritual disciplines that we have to practice in our own inner life, in our own mental world. And when we really practice all these disciplines, then naturally it is inevitable, it is invariable, it is imminent that we will develop a strong desire, a strong ambition to realize this transcendental reality. That is the real destination of our spiritual journey. It is called mumukshutvam in the technical language of Vedanta. So these are the first four disciplines in our journey to realize the truth that Brahman or Atman is the only absolute reality. It is not a concept. When we read this, when we write about this, when we listen to this, we may feel that it sounds somewhat utopian. It doesn't sound to be very practical. That's because we have not started a journey. If you want to climb Mount Everest, you have to practice for long years. You have to practice hiking in the nearby mountains in your own village, in your own locality. You have to become a member of a club where you are taught how to climb, how to do rock climbing, how to do hiking, how to climb mountain climbing. There are professional clubs where they teach you how to start your journey, and your final destination is to reach the top of the Mount Everest. But you have to start the journey in your own village, in your own town. You have to go to the nearby hill and start your journey by practicing every day, climbing that hill. Then after several years of practice, one day you will be ready to reach the top of the Mount Everest. If somebody takes you in a plane and drops you at the top of the Mount Everest, you will die because you can't stand the extreme cold of the Mount Everest. But when you practice for long years, when you practice mountain climbing for long years under professional masters, then you will acquire the ability to withstand the strain of climbing Mount Everest several years later. If somebody drops you, Somebody takes you in a plane and drops you in a helicopter, drops you on the top of the mountain, Mount Everest, you won't be able to survive. So if we feel that this Advaita is some kind of a utopian, non-practical idea or a concept, a doctrine, it's because we have not even started climbing the hill in our own neighborhoods. And we are listening to a lecture on reaching the top of Mount Everest. So naturally, it all looks so utopian, imaginary. So these are the first 4 disciplines. The second part of this discipline, it includes 3 steps, in fact 3 disciplines. 5th, 6th and 7th. In Sanskrit language, it's called Sravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. So when you develop, as a result of practicing these 4 disciplines, when you develop an extreme desire to reach, let us say, the Advaitic experience, then naturally you will be looking for, where can I learn about this Advaita? Where can I learn about this spiritual ideal? In fact, Buddha had that experience. A man who was born as a prince, who never knew the darker side of human life, suddenly happened to see 4 visions, 4 sight that actually unsettled his mind. He saw a dead body being taken to the cremation ground. He saw an old man sitting on the streets, an old haggard man. He saw a sick man. So he saw these 3 visions of pain, sorrow, tragedy, and tears. And then he saw the face of a saint, where there was no sorrow, there was absolute bliss. So Buddha wanted to be like the saint. And he started walking. He walked more than 1,000 miles from Lumbini, and then he reached Bodh Gaya. He sat under a tree because he had reached this stage of strong desire to realize the truth. That is called Mumukshutvam, of course, the 4th discipline that we already discussed. Then what he did, he sat under a tree, Bodhi tree. And Ashugosha, in his biography of Buddha, writes, Ihasane sushyadu me shariram tugasti mamsam cha vilayam cha yatuhu aprapya siddhim bhagu janma durlabham Naivasanat kayam ataschalishyati. He says, I am going to sit under this tree, let my body perish, let my body, my flesh and bones be reduced into nothing. Even if I perish, I won't get up from this seat before I realize the supreme goal of human life, which can be reached only by efforts for several life cycles. So that was what Buddha did. Before saying that Advaita is just an utopian idea, we should try to reach the level of Buddha, who left his will, comforts and kingdom and his palace and walked and tried, and then if you don't get it, then you can say Advaita is wrong. Because Buddhist realization, Buddhist nirvana is only a different reading and different interpretation of Advaitic moksha or mukti or liberation. So then what happens, when you reach that level of intense desire for spiritual emancipation, then you will naturally you'll start looking for reading books, listening to those ideas. You will go to the nearby library and read books as Paul Brandon did. And he read something and he felt a strong desire to meet an Indian saint, Ramana Maharshi, went there and became practically his lifelong admirer, a disciple in a very informal sense. So he was a great man because he was looking for something higher. So when you reach the state of looking for something higher, then naturally you'll be eager to connect with those ideas. Reading, listening, with great concentration, the great sanctity and sacredness. It is called Sravanam. Sravanam literally means listening, but it has got different dimensions of meaning. At the highest level, Sravana can directly take you to experience. That's what we are going to discuss in course of time. So, when you reach that state, then you listen, then you will start thinking, you'll start meditating on the meaning of what you read, what you listen. Naturally, you will read books. You will listen to teachers who are expounding these Advaitic scriptures with a sense of sanctity and sacredness and intensity. That be much deeper than the intensity of an Einstein who was exploring the mysteries of nature. In fact, the intensity that is necessary to explore our own inner world and realize our true nature, our transcendental spiritual dimension, that intensity is much higher than the intensity of a scientist who is, after all, directing his effort, his meditation, his investigation into external world. The same investigation, when directed to the internal world, will take you to this realization, but it requires a much greater intensity. So that kind of meditation on the meaning, on the essence of what you read, what you understand is called Mananam. That is the sixth discipline. And the seventh discipline is Nididhyasanam, meditation or internalization. So, Brahma Satyam, Brahman is the only reality, and the world is only a relative entity, is a changing reality, is a matter of spiritual experience and spiritual evolution that we reach as a result of our own spiritual journey. It is not something that we believe in. We believe in, of course, but belief is only the kindergarten stage. You have to believe in order to do something. But belief, according to Advaita, is only the beginning of our spiritual journey. So, after this, in the next session, we will discuss the other aspects and other related aspects of Advaita Vedanta. Thank you. Namaskar. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.